Hello, everyone. Welcome to this lecture. A very intriguing, a very scholaristic lecture. I welcome you. So without further ado, what we're going to do today is we're going to focus our discussions around development administration. Not only that, we are going to understand development administration from the context of Weidner, this amazing theorist theorizing upon development administration. And we're going to understand development administration from the point of view of Fred Riggs. So from the Riggsian perspective and from the Weidner perspective, we're going to understand development administration. So development administration. Before actually we start understanding, discussing development administration, I think let's pause for a second and let's deeply try to answer this simple question. What is development? What does it mean to have development? Is development merely an economic growth? Is it a parameter determining economic growth? Is it the increase in the GDP, the gross domestic product? Is it that? Is it industrialization? Is it urbanization? Is it technological advancement? Or is development something deeper? Is it more like transformation of the society itself? What is development? So this question will itself go deeper as a philosophical and scientific question. It will not merely remain philosophical. It is the very foundation of development administration. What constitutes development? What is development? And the very foundation of that is the answer, the quest to answer this question. What is development? And only once we understand that will we be able to embark upon understanding the bigger aspects of development administration. The nature of administration itself depends fundamentally on what kind of society we seek to create. So whenever the answer revolves around society को कहाँ हम देखना चाहते हैं, society क्या aspire करती है, उस चीज को follow करेगा और उसको pursue करेगा administration. But you'll have to define, you'll have to answer what development is. So I want you to go a little bit back in time. Back in time to the mid-20th century. This mid-20th century after World War II has already taken place. World War II से हम बाहर आए हुए हैं और large parts of Asia, Africa and Latin America. All these countries in these continents have attained freedom. Countries like India, countries like Indonesia, countries like Egypt, countries like Ghana and so on. So there are these newly created empires now in their own right, sovereign countries. And now these countries are expected to transform their traditional agrarian, poverty-ridden societies into modern, prosperous states, and that too within a very few decades. So that's what is expected of these societies now. कि छोटी आपने liberated countries जो हैं, India's and Ghana's and all these countries, decolonization के backdrop में, they've gotten independence, and now they've decolonized, and now they are expected to transform rapidly their society. वही इन पे दबाव है, and it is these countries that are expected to do that in a few decades. यूरोप को जो चीज करने में, which the Europe, the cradle of modern civilization, उसको जो चीज अचीव करने में more than 3 centuries का टाइम लगा, more than 300 long years it took, वही चीज अचीव करने के लिए इन hitherto agrarian backward societies को expect किया जा रहा है within few decades वो चीज achieve करें. This is the backdrop. You'll have to understand under which context development and development administration it took its form, present shape. So these newly developed countries are expected to embark upon what we call as what the West has reached, where the West has reached. So इनको उस जगह पे पहुंचने के लिए, इनको वो अचीव करने के लिए similar transformation from single generation expect कर रहे हैं. इस चीज ने एक profound question rise किया for scholars of administration. ये जो quest थी, so it posed a very significant question to the scholars of administration. और वो question ये था, can the traditional administrative systems, can the traditional administrative models वो जो established models हैं, वो वाले models हैं जिनके basis पे West पहुंच गया उन जगहों पे जहां पे वो aspire कर रहा है कि Rest भी बहुत जल्दी पहुंच जाए. So, can these models of the West guide societies क्या करने के लिए? To undergo such massive transformation. To undergo such massive transformation. So it's a big question. I want you to again pause and just think about it. Can the traditional administrative models guide societies to undergo such massive transformations? These transformations, which countries collectively, which continents like Europe have taken 3 centuries to arrive at. And the answer to this increasingly appeared to be a big no. नहीं. Traditional systems, जो Western models of administration है, वो help नहीं कर सकते achieve करने के लिए in newly liberated, decolonized, poverty-stricken इलिटरेसी स्ट्रिकन एग्रेरियन सोसाइटीज को डेवलप होने के लिए, क्योंकि लिमिटेशंस हैं क्लासिकल मॉडल्स में, बिकॉज ऑफ द लिमिटेशंस of classical models, because of the limitations of the classical models of administration. Okay, so there are certain limitations. Now let's go on understanding what are these limitations that we are talking about. So all those classical models of administration जो अभी तक हैं, they were driven by, they were thought upon, and they were pontificated and proliferated. They were dominated by thinkers and scholars like Woodrow Wilson, जो हमने in detail discuss किया है. Woodrow Wilson, not only him, scholars and thinkers like Max Weber. So ये systems dominated है by the ideologies, the theories, the theorizations, the principles of scholars like Woodrow Wilson, scholars like Max Weber, whose primary concern was, we have understood their theories, their prime concern was stability. Stability, systems ki stability. Their prime concern was rigidity. Their prime concern was predictability. The prime concern was predictability in the systems. और ये बहुत ज्यादा फोकस कर रहे थे. जब हमने इनकी थियरीज को समझा है, हमने कहा है कि इन्होंने बहुत ज्यादा फोकस किया एफिशिएंसी पे. वी रियलाइज कि एफिशिएंसी के पीछे पागल थे. एफिशिएंट एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन को बनाना है, एफिशिएंट मॉडल को बनाना है, आउटकम एफिशिएंट होना चाहिए, एफिशिएंट सिस्टम होना चाहिए. सो वी अंडरस्टूड व्हेन वी वर studying these systems, when we were studying these theories, we realized that ये जो traditional public administration के thinkers थे, traditional scholars थे, not only of public administration, sociology and governance, all these scholars, all the classical scholars in particular, these classical scholars are obsessed towards stability, they're obsessed towards rigidity, they're obsessed towards predictability, and they're obsessed towards efficiency. But these systems had given results. इस सिस्टम ने रिजल्ट दिया था. उन सिस्टम्स ने जो स्टेबिलिटी के पीछे थे, जो रिजिडिटी के पीछे थे, जो प्रिडिक्टेबिलिटी के पीछे थे, जो एफिशिएंसी के पीछे थे, इन्होंने रिजल्ट शो किए थे. बट इन्होंने रिजल्ट शो किए थे ऑलरेडी डेवलप्ड स्टेट्स में, ऑलरेडी डेवलप्ड स्टेट्स, जबकि इनको अब समझने की जरूरत है. नाउ द पॉइंट ऑफ कंसर्न इज यूजिंग दीज मॉडल्स टू accelerate development in the third world. वो जो ऑलरेडी डेवलप्ड अब नहीं है, जिनको डेवलपमेंट स्टार्ट करनी है स्क्रैच से, इनका प्राइमरी कंसर्न, जो वेस्ट का प्राइमरी कंसर्न है, वो मेंटेनेंस था. मेंटेनेंस, क्योंकि दे हैड ऑलरेडी द व्हील ऑफ development was already churning. It had already moved from inertia. एक जगह के रेस्ट को inertia कहते हैं. फिजिक्स की टर्मिनोलॉजी में, उसने इन लोगों की डेवलपमेंट ग्रोथ ने पहले से एक मोमेंटम गेन किया था. द व्हील वॉज टर्निंग, द व्हील वॉज स्पिनिंग इन देयर कॉन्टेक्स्ट. जबकि डेवलप्ड साउथ के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में द व्हील इज स्टिल इन इनर्शिया, उसको अभी मूव करना बाकी है. सो आपकी एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन जो है वो बेस्ड है इन चीजों पे. आपके गोल्स डिफरेंट है. आपके गोल्स ये हैं कि आपको मेंटेन करना है जो आपने अचीव किया है. आपका गोल ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन, आपका कंसर्न जो है वो मेंटेनेंस है. इट इज नॉट ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन, जो डेवलपिंग साउथ का गोल है. सो योर गोल, the developed North's goal, the developed countries' growth was to maintain what they had already succeeded in achieving. While as for the developing South, it was about transformation. They had to transform. So the prime concerns are different. So these developed South countries developing South countries required something different. They required those administrative systems which would be capable of engineering this social change. Administration was no longer expected to maintain order. It was expected to create development. Abhi tak it was only under colonial rule, administration was supposed to maintain order. But now under the garb of independence, these states were expected to do much more than that. They were supposed to create development. It was in this context that the scholars began to ask deeper questions. Can administration itself become an instrument of social transformation? And it is this question which gives birth to a new field of study, which is called as development administration. Development administration का जन्म इस inquisitiveness से होता है कि क्या एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन खुद से एक इंस्ट्रूमेंट बन सकता है सोशल ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन का. यह आइडिया बहुत रेवोल्यूशनरी था. Administration should not merely implement policies, it should vehemently, it should actively promote economic growth, not only economic growth, but social growth, not only that, but justice. So in other words, bureaucracy जो है, it must become an agent of development by itself. ब्यूरोक्रेसी को खुद से एजेंट बनना होगा डेवलपमेंट का. ठीक है. Now comes the bitter part or the normative turn. वो ये था कि क्लासिकल पब्लिक एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन जो है वो बिलीव कर रही थी इन न्यूट्रलिटी. That was believing in neutrality. So this traditional public administration, it was still hitched on or married to or hooked up with the idea of neutrality, that politics and administration are different, politics administration dichotomy. But development administration jo hai, it is development administration, it is emphasizing on purpose. डेवलपमेंट एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन एक पर्पस ढूंढ रही है, पर्पस के पीछे पड़ी हुई है, तो ये न्यूट्रलिटी के खिलाफ जा रहा है. Hence, bureaucracy was not expected to pursue explicit developmental goals. Get it? So now bureaucracy in itself, since development administration is very purposive in nature, and why is it purposive in nature? What do we mean by that? By that we mean that development administration has certain purposes to fulfill. And the purposes are, let's say, poverty eradication. Development administration is now purposive. It has to move forward and it has to now achieve the purpose of poverty eradication. It has to achieve the purpose of, let's say, agricultural modernization. It has to move ahead and achieve the purpose of industrial growth. It has to move ahead and achieve the purpose of educational expansion. It has to move ahead and achieve the purpose of social equality. Get it? So it is very purposive in nature now. So administration now becomes very goal oriented. It becomes very change oriented. It becomes very future oriented. ठीक है? So इस केस में so change from the neutrality stance जो classicals जिसको लेके चल रहे थे, classical theorists and classical public administration in particular जिसको लेके चल रही थी, जिस stand को, जिस stance को, वो डेवलपमेंट एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन के गार्ब के अंडर जो बहुत पर्पसिव था, उसके अंडर एक नॉर्मेटिव शिफ्ट नजर आया हमें. वी सॉ अ बिग नॉर्मेटिव shift in public administration. Normative shift in public administration. Now the question no longer remained how can public administration operate efficiently, which the classicals were proliferating. So the question no longer remained that. Now the question itself changed to how can public administration transform society? Abhi tak, the question was how can public administration be more efficient? Now the question under the garb of development administration becomes how can public administration transform the society? This is the normative shift. In these developed Western economies, development was largely driven by the markets and private enterprises. Wahan pe, remember the public choice approach lecture that I taught you, where we saw this economic theory of politics entering systems. Remember that lecture where I talked to you about how market influences, market mechanisms, market principles, market ethos were taken and embedded into the administrative systems. In that aspect, developed Western economies under the garb of capitalism had already done that. They had already reached that place where Western economic development was largely driven by these market forces, these market enterprises. But in these newly independent countries, markets were often weak. In these global South countries, markets बहुत weak थे. Capital का flow था नहीं, capital scarce था बहुत ज़्यादा. So there's a stark difference between these two parallels. Institutions बहुत fragile थे. जो आपके developed economies थे, वहाँ के institutions बहुत ही ज़्यादा robust थे. As a result, state assumed the central role in development. In these developing South, in context of the global South, administrative apparatus became responsible for planning the economic growth. Administrative apparatus became responsible for implementing developmental programs. It became important for mobilizing resources. It became important in coordinating large-scale transformations. in context of these developing South countries. Thus, there emerged, of course, scholars often called as the developmental state scholars. And these developmental state scholars, they called this phase as the development, these countries, these newly liberated countries who were aspiring to reach that level of development, and where the state had taken the control to actually take over the agenda of development. That called this, the scholars term coined this term, the developmental state for these states. Okay? And in such a state, bureaucracy became the primary instrument of nation building. It was the bureaucracy which became the primary instrument for nation building. It was the instrument which was relied upon. In context of India, India provided perhaps the most striking example for development administration in practice. कैसे? क्योंकि after independence, Indian state adopted a very ambitious project of planned economy, which we borrowed from Russia. Government established institutions such as the Planning Commission, which is the Niti Aayog now, the public sector enterprises, all our halls and Hindustan Aeronautics Limiteds and Bharat Electronics Limiteds, all our Navratna and Mini Ratna companies. So government started establishing those institutions. Rural development programs were started at a very large scale. So the administrative system was expected to carry out the economic task. It was the administrative system now. In the Western context, it was the market which was playing the economic role. But in the Indian context, it was the state itself. Under this developmental state, it was the state itself which was undertaking the role of transforming and rolling out the economic growth for such countries, including India. Transforming this large agrarian economy into modern industrial economy. It is the state which is undertaking that role. And in this context, administration became not merely a technical apparatus, but it had to it became an instrument of social engineering as well. ठीक? So there are two scholars who played important roles, particularly in conceptualizing the development administration. And they are Edward Weidner and Fred H. Riggs. So these two amazing theorists, they led the path, and it was they who played very important roles in context of development administration. Weidner, in fact, he emphasized that goal. He emphasized the goal nature of public administration in developing societies, the goal nature. So he emphasizes upon the goal nature. It was Edward Weidner, who emphasized upon the goal-oriented nature of administration, goal-oriented nature. Of public administration in developing countries. That administration has to wed itself to a goal. It has to marry a goal, administration itself. And it was Riggs who pointed out the structural and the cultural constraints. So now it is Riggs, on the other hand side, who highlighted how cultural and structural constraints will be faced by administrative systems in transitional societies. Remember, we have studied and understood Fred Riggs in depth. We have had a whole lecture dedicated to Fred Riggs, where we discussed about his theories and theorizations, and in particular about his prismatic society. So that's why I'm making this flow कि आपके लिए आसान हो ये समझना. There's a this sequence of delivering lectures in this scheme of things is well thought out by me, because I'm trying to follow a learning curve for all of you. So एडवर्ड वीड डेवलपमेंट एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन के बैकड्रॉप में जो हमें थेरिस्ट नजर आते हैं जो बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट कंट्रीब्यूशन देते हैं इन टर्म्स ऑफ दीज डेवलपिंग सोसाइटीज, द वीडनर, एडवर्ड वीडनर and Fred Riggs. And Weidner talks about this goal-oriented nature of the society, and Riggs in turn talks about the constraints that the structural constraints and the cultural constraints that transitional societies, these transitioning societies, which means these global south societies, face. And in that aspect, together, they helped establish development administration as a very distinct field in public administration as a whole. So, in चीजों की वजह से development administration in public administration becomes altogether a different genre of study itself, not just one chapter. It becomes a whole genre of understanding in itself. Understand this, at its deepest level, at its deepest core, development administration asks a very, very profound question, that can bureaucratic institutions, which are traditionally associated with rigidity and routine work, can these bureaucratic institutions be the instruments of dynamic social change? It is at the core that it's the core of development administration. ये जो institutions हैं जो ये जो institutions हैं जो बहुत traditional है, ये जो institutions है जो driven by the philosophies and the principles of traditional philosophy है, traditional scholarly wisdom है, क्या ये societies, क्या ये instruments capable हैं ये dynamic social change लाने के लिए? क्या ये administrative systems maintain कर सकते हैं stability और साथ साथ में produce transformation? Can they juggle between stability and, because they have to juggle between stability. Their core talks about stability. The Weberian core talks about stability, and then transformation is what is required under development administration. इनका नेचर स्टेबिलिटी का है, इनका एक्सपीरियंस स्टेबिलिटी का है, क्या ये सरवाइव कर सकते हैं, क्या ये सस्टेन कर सकते हैं उस स्टेबिलिटी को, और उसके साथ साथ क्या ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन भी ये सोसाइटी में दे सकते हैं. I think it's important for you at this point of time in your learning to understand these two concepts of which the scholars they often distinguish between, and these are administration of development and administration of development and development of administration. These two concepts. Scholars have deeply talked about, distinguished between these two concepts, and it's very important from your exam point of view also to understand the difference. Administration of development and the development of administration. The administration of development, it refers to administrative structures and processes used to implement policies. Administration of development, it is the bureaucracy as a whole. It is what it is aspiring to do. It is the structure of bureaucracy. It is the process of bureaucracy. It is the implementing arm of the government. So it is administration of development. It is overseeing of development. For example, the Planning Commission or the Niti Aayog in today's context. For example, development ministries, various ministries, the Rural Development Ministry, the Renewable Energy Ministry, the Health Ministry, the Education Ministry, these development ministries, rural development agencies, rural development agencies, NABARD, for example, National Agricultural Bank for Reconstruction. So NABARD, all these agencies which are directly involved in the developmental process, which are overseeing it, the administrative structures, the processes used to oversee development, to implement developmental policies, that is administration of development. On the other hand side, now we have development of administration. Development of administration. Development of administration is developing the capacity of the administration. It is strengthening administrative capacity. Strengthening the administrative capacity. It is strengthening the administrative capacity. For example, the government of India recently launched Mission Karma Yogi, the capacity building commission. That is development of administration, because you're developing, your capacity building the administration. It would include civil service reforms, which are reforming the civil services from within. So that is development of administration. Various training programs that are undertaken, training programs that are undertaking to capacity build the institutions of bureaucracy. Institutional modernizations. Institutional modernization. These are used to strengthen the capacity of the civil services, of the administration. So that is why it forms the part of development of administration. So these are two different aspects. One is the administration of development, the other becoming the development of administration itself. Now, there's certain, I hope you have understood this. Now, there are certain key features. Key features of development administration. There are certain key features to development administration. And they are, which we just understood, that it is change oriented, because it has arrived and it has evolved in the context of change that is aspired of these global south countries to actually reach where the global north has reached. So in that aspect, the various key features to it, and number one being a change orientation of this development administration. Not only change orientation, they are pursuing a goal. So they have goal orientation as well. They are pursuing change. So they are pursuing a desired state of affairs. And in that desired state of affairs, they are pursuing a goal. Innovation. Innovation. Innovation becomes another very important key feature of development administration. Citizen participation. It becomes important ingredient. So change orientation, goal orientation, innovation, citizen participation. It becomes a very important aspect of development administration. Not only that, flexibility, moving away from rigidity of bureaucracy. Flexibility. It becomes an important feature of development administration. Okay. So I hope by now you're pretty much clear in your head with respect to development administration, where all it evolved, what all it are, its context, and everything around development administration as such. Now, we go deeper into understanding this theorist who we talked about, Edward Weidner. Now we go around understanding Edward Weidner. So we just explained how Edward Weidner, along with other theorists like Fred Riggs, actually heralded, actually pioneered the very concept of development administration, how they were the pioneers. Edward Weidner, he was associated with University of Michigan's Institute of Public Administration. So University of Michigan's Institute of Public Administration. He was associated with University of Michigan's Institute of Public Administration. Not only that, because of his engagement with the university, he was engaged in studying the administration in developing societies, which means the global south. It is important at this point of time that we understand how Weidner defined development administration. So he defined development administration as the process of guiding an organization, the process of guiding an organization towards the achievement of the process of guiding the organization towards the achievement of progressive political and economical and political, economical, and social objectives. So according to Weidner, development administration is the process of guiding an organization in such a way that it attains its social, political, and economic objectives. So every developing state has aspirations, has goals, and these goals we can call as political, they can be economical, they can be social. So the process through which these objectives are achieved, according to Weidner, that is development administration. So this very definition, according to Weidner, gives us certain characteristics. It makes us arrive at certain characteristics of development administration. तो वो goal orientation है, because if it is pursuing something, that has to be a goal. इसका मतलब development administration neutral नहीं है. ठीक है. सो अगर आप पॉवर्टी रिडक्शन की तरफ जा रहे हैं, अगर आप एग्रीकल्चर ग्रोथ की तरफ जा रहे हैं, आप इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन की तरफ जा रहे हैं, इफ यू आर vehemently pursuing such objectives, you are not neutral, you are goal oriented. So one, it becomes goal oriented, and second, just like we just decided, we just talked about, it becomes change oriented because of all these things, because it is aspiring to reach somewhere, and that state is different. That means that state is a changed state. It is aspiring on capacity building. It is aspiring on capacity building. This is according to Weidner. So Weidner argued that administration must function as an engine of development. Administration must function as an engine of development. Administration itself has to function as an engine of development, according to Weidner. Because in developing countries where development administration finds its more focus, because it was initiated and it was born in context of the global south. So in that aspect, developing countries where markets may be very weak, developed countries where markets are strong, developing countries where markets may be very weak, that's why administration must function as an engine. In the global north, market is the engine. But in global south, the markets may be absent. In that aspect, the society, the state itself will have to, the administration itself will have to function as an engine. Civil society may be underdeveloped. In context of the global north, civil society is super developed, super conscious. So therefore, the state becomes primary driver of development in context of these developing South nations. If you use this lens and look at India's growth trajectory, India's story, it's the idea, this very idea is strongly influenced by India's early developmental strategy. Immediately after independence, India ने adopt किया state-led development planning, जो Weidner के according ही है, जैसे 5-year plans which we initiated, the large public sector undertakings that we started, agricultural development programs that we started. In short, bureaucracy became the instrument, it became the implementing instrument of these programs. You can find them in context of community development programs which were started in 1952, community development programs of 1952. In Indian context, we are talking about in particular intensive agricultural district programs, intensive agricultural district programs, which we started, integrated rural development programs, integrated rural development programs. So all of these are directly in sync with the Weidner ideology and the Weidner theorization. Now, let's try to understand Fred Riggs. I have fried him. Fred Riggs. So now let's try to understand this another theorist who we just talked about as being one of the pioneers of one of the most influential scholars who pioneered the subject of the theorization of development administration. Riggs is widely, we've already covered Riggs in detail. All of you are aware of that. I'm sure you all have a very good understanding. But right now we're trying to look at development administration in particular. So we're trying to understand the Riggsian perspective, how Riggs's lenses fit upon the developmental administration paradigm. Riggs is all known for the prismatic society model. We have understood that. Prismatic society model. So it is Fred Riggs who is known for having championed the prismatic society model and comparative development administration. He's considered to be a pioneer of comparative development administration. Fredericks is considered to be synonymous with administrative ecology concept, which is an offshoot of the prismatic society model. Administrative ecology. So Riggs is associated with all of this, and we have discussed them in detail in our Riggsian lecture. But it's not only this that he is associated with. Riggs is also associated highly and hugely with development administration. Because Riggs asks a very central question: why do administrative systems that work in the developed countries fail in these developing countries? वो सिस्टम्स एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन के ही क्यों काम कर रहे हैं डेवलप्ड वेस्ट में, उन्हीं सिस्टम्स को जब उठा के इंप्लीमेंट किया जाता है डेवलपिंग साउथ में, वो सिस्टम्स फेल क्यों हो रहे हैं? And it is through his studies, it is through his theorizations that we finally he comes to the conclusion that वो फेल इसलिए हो रहे हैं क्योंकि administrative systems जो हैं, they are shaped by social environment. Administrative systems are shaped by ecological environments. Ecological environments. It is these ecological environments that are shaping these systems in these developing south countries. Developing south जो developing north से different है. Developing north जिसकी administration very much successful hai as compared to developing south. And why is that actually happening? That is happening according to Riggs because the ecology of these developing south countries is totally and completely different from the ecology, the environment, not in terms of trees and flora and fauna, but in terms of the culture, in terms of the societal expectations, in terms of the society itself. Riggs explain करता है इस एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव इकोलॉजी को, आर्ग्यू करता है कि एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन कैन नॉट बी स्टडीड इन आइसोलेशन. आप एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन को आइसोलेशन में पढ़ ही नहीं सकते. आपको एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन को हर वक्त एनालाइज करना होगा ब्रॉडर इकोलॉजिकल कॉन्टेक्स्ट में. वो क्या मतलब है? उसका मतलब है सोशल स्ट्रक्चर्स आपको समझने होंगे अगर आपको एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन समझना है. आपको पॉलिटिकल कल्चर समझना होगा अगर आपको एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन समझनी है. अगर आपको एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन समझनी है, आपको इकोनॉमिक डेवलपमेंट समझनी होगी उस जगह की क्या है. सो एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन खुद से एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन अपने कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स और टाइप ऑफ एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन खुद से नहीं बनती. ये डिपेंडेंट है कुछ चीजों पे अकॉर्डिंग टू रिग्स, जो रिग्स का इकोलॉजी का कॉन्सेप्ट है. और रिग्स कह रहा है इकोलॉजी जो एक सिस्टम की है, एक सोसाइटी की है. बाय इकोलॉजी ही मींस वहां का पॉलिटिकल कल्चर जैसा है, वहां का, बिकॉज एवरी place on earth has a different political culture, it has a different social culture, it has a different economic level of development. So only after you understand that ecology, you understand those social customs and cuisines and you understand those expectations and aspirations in political sphere and social sphere, and their level of economic development and their aspirations there also, then only you will be able to understand the administrative development. Not development of administration, but administrative development. ठीक? इसने जो प्रिज्मेटिक सोसाइटी मॉडल दिया, वो प्रिज्मेटिक सोसाइटी मॉडल भी प्रिज्मेटिक सोसाइटी मॉडल इसने ये यूज किया एज रेफरेंस टू एक्सप्लेन द एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव डेवलपमेंट. He talked about fused society. Fused society. इसके अकॉर्डिंग फ्यूज सोसाइटी वो सोसाइटी है अकॉर्डिंग टू हिम जो जहां फंक्शंस डिफरेंशिएट आप नहीं कर सकते. फ्यूज सोसाइटी अकॉर्डिंग टू हिम वो सोसाइटी है जहां फंक्शंस आर इंटरलैपिंग, दे आर ओवरलैपिंग, जहां आप फंक्शंस अलग नहीं कर सकते. जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल जो गांव का हेड है, मुखिया है, वो सारे काम कर रहा है, जो किसी और को भी करने थे वो भी वो कर रहा है. So this village chief he performs all the duties. So that is a fused thing. He has centralized everything and everything, everyone expects him to do everything. So this is a fuse where you cannot differentiate. किसको करना है? मुखिया जी, मुखिया जी, मुखिया जी, मुखिया जी. Everything is there. So according to him, that is a fused society. And then he talks about a prismatic society. जहां पे फ्यूज सोसाइटी में सब मुखिया जी को करना है, he has a system now to get things done. और वो वही स्टैग्नेंट सिस्टम है. तो वहां आपको एक तरीके का एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव एनवायरनमेंट मिलेगा, एक तरीके की फंक्शनिंग मिलेगी एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन की. ट्रेडिशनल सोसाइटी जहां पे मॉडर्न और ट्रेडिशनल इनोवेशंस कोएग्जिस्ट करते हैं, वो प्रिज्मेटिक सोसाइटी है अकॉर्डिंग टू फ्रेडरिक्स. जहां पे ट्रेडिशनल सोसाइटी, ये वो ट्रेडिशनल सोसाइटीज हैं, प्रिज्मेटिक सोसाइटीज, ये वो ट्रेडिशनल सोसाइटीज हैं जहां पे मॉडर्न और ट्रेडिशनल इंस्टीट्यूशंस, मॉडर्न प्लस ट्रेडिशनल institutions, they coexist. So these coexist in a prismatic society. ठीक है? ये क्रिएट करता है टेंशंस और डिस्टॉर्शंस, क्योंकि एक ही सिस्टम में दोनों ट्रेडिशनल भी है, मॉडर्न भी है. ये क्रिएट करता है डिस्टॉर्शंस को. रिग्स ने आर्ग्यू किया कि जो मैक्सिमम डेवलपिंग सोसाइटीज हैं वो फॉल करती हैं इस कैटेगरी में. आर्ग्यूड मोस्ट ऑफ दीज डेवलपिंग सोसाइटीज जिनके बारे में कंपैरेटिव डेवलपमेंट एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन में ये पढ़ रहा था, इसने कहा ये वो सोसाइटीज, मोस्ट ऑफ दीज सोसाइटीज लाई करती हैं इस सिस्टम में, प्रिज्मेटिक सोसाइटी में, जहां पे ट्रेडिशनल और मॉडर्न इंस्टीट्यूशंस जो है कोएग्जिस्ट कर रहे हैं, जिसने क्रिएट करके रखा है टेंशन, जिसने क्रिएट करके रखा है कंफ्यूजन, जिसने क्रिएट करके रखा है डिस्टॉर्शन. एंड देन ही टॉक्ड अबाउट अ डिफ्रैक्टेड सोसाइटी. डिफ्रैक्टेड सोसाइटी. और इसके अकॉर्डिंग डिफ्रैक्टेड सोसाइटी वो है जो हाईली मॉडर्न सोसाइटी है विथ स्पेशलाइज्ड, highly modern with specialized institutions. जैसे advanced Western democracies. So those advanced Western democracies are an example right out of the diffracted society as discussed by Fredericks. प्रिज्मेटिक सोसाइटी के अकॉर्डिंग टू हिम, जिसमें मोस्ट ऑफ द डेवलपिंग साउथ जो है वो लाई करता है, उसके कुछ फीचर्स है, जैसे वो फॉर्मल बहुत ज्यादा है, उसमें फॉर्मलिज्म बहुत ज्यादा है, ये करना है, फिर ये करना है, फिर ये करना है, वेरी फॉर्मलिस्टिक सोसाइटी, वो हेटेरोजेनस है, वो उसमें ओवरलैपिंग रोल्स हैं, ठीक है। बाय फॉर्मलिज्म के फॉर्मल रूल्स जो हैं वो कोएग्जिस्ट करते हैं विथ not with but on paper, but they are not implemented in practice. So the rules exist on paper, but they are not implemented. So that's why they are formal in nature. ठीक है, वो heterogeneous है क्योंकि वहां पे बहुत सारे systems हैं, वो overlapping है क्योंकि बहुत सारे institutions जो हैं वो similar function जो है वो उठाते हैं. You have a ministry of energy, then you have a ministry of renewable energy. Get it? So many doing the same thing. Prismatic societies में according to him जो challenges रहते हैं वो रहते हैं कि administrative reform जो है वो formal structural change के वो रिफॉर्म्स फेल हो जाते हैं प्रिज्मेटिक सोसाइटीज में अकॉर्डिंग टू हिम, क्योंकि फॉर्मल स्ट्रक्चर्स जो हैं वो चेंज होते रहते हैं और सोशल रियलिटीज जो है वो अनचेंज रहती हैं. फॉर्मल सिस्टम्स चेंज होते हैं, आज ये लिखा था कल कुछ और लिखा होगा, परसों कुछ और लिखा होगा, बट एक्चुअल में जो सोसाइटी है वो अनचेंज रहती है, वो सिस्टम्स जो हैं वो अनचेंज रहते हैं. With this, we complete today's lecture of development administration and Fredericks and Weidner. I hope you got what I intended all of you to understand today in this lecture. We have discussed, I wanted this lecture to be different in context of development administration, क्योंकि आपके क्वेश्चंस जो हैं वो उसके लिए इम्पोर्टेंट है. जो मैं यूपीएससी का ट्रेंड देख रहा हूँ पब्लिक एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन के रिगार्डिंग, ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट हो जाता है कि आप इसको इस तरीके से समझे. आपने रिक्सियन थियरी अलग से समझ ली, आई टॉट यू दैट सेपरेटली. रिवाइज योर नोट्स, रिवाइज, यू हैव दिस lectures online recorded to you as well. So इसको अच्छे से पढ़ लो, इसको अच्छे से समझ लो, and see you guys in the next lecture. Bye bye.